Good morning. Welcome to Friendship Moments with Pastor DeWayne Crumley, Friendship Baptist Church in Center Star, Alabama. I was talking to my son recently, and we were talking about just life in general. And the term came up, boy, it's been a bumpy road lately, and all the things that are going on in the world, and with the economy like it is, and interest rates going up, and fuel prices going up, and it's been a bumpy road, and it got me to thinking, as a Christian, we have bumpy roads. And I have learned more on a bumpy road than I have a smooth road. I've learned more about God when I was in the valley than I was on the mountaintop. Also, I learned more about myself when I was in the valley than I was on the mountaintop. And I think today we need to look at ourselves and not look at the circumstances we're in and don't ask why, but I think we need to ask God, what are you trying to teach me? In Genesis, the 50th chapter, we come to the end of a story where Joseph had been sold into slavery by his brothers. And if you actually read the story, Joseph didn't have a smooth ride. He had a bumpy ride. He got sold into slavery. He got thrown into prison. All these things happened to him. But when it came time for Joseph to reveal himself to his brothers, Joseph looked at them and said, "Hey, y'all meant this for evil, but God meant it for good." What does that mean? It means that Joseph had learned more about God and more about himself because of the things the brothers did, because of his bumpy road, than at any other times. And in my life, I certainly can say that. I look back now on my life, and I'm certainly closer to God at 65 than I was at 25. Certainly closer to God at 65 than I was at 35. I also know more about God now at 65. Why? Because I can look back on my life, and I can say, hey, God has been faithful even during the bumpy ride, even during the bumpy road. Even when I felt like I was totally out of control, God was still in control. And if the Lord doesn't change my mind this coming Sunday, I'm going to do a message about the bumpy road. And I'm going to give us examples in the Bible of people who had a bumpy road. And I also want to remind you that the bumpy road is for your good. It's not for God's good. It's for your good. And the road to better is bumpy. What does that mean? You can't get better until you realize that you need to change. If you're in a bumpy road right now, God is taking you to something better. You can't get to better without bumpy. You can't get to better without pain. You can't get to better without tears. You can't get better and closer to God until you look at yourself. You can't lose weight if you don't push away from all the food, and that's bumpy sometimes. You can't get to better without bumpy. There's no easy solution to this. It's God's process. And so your life may have been bumpy. It may have been one catastrophe after another. But what is God teaching you? What is God showing you? We have a tendency to look back and say, I wish I had done this, or I wish I had known that. Listen, we wouldn't have learned it back then. We wouldn't have understood it back then. God has a way of using the problems in our life and our bumpy roads for our good because He loves us. So today I'd like you to maybe sit alone for a while and think about what God has taught you on the bumpy roads. What God has taught you when you felt like you couldn't take another step. What God has taught you when life just seemed to fall apart. I can tell you this. One thing that you should have learned is that He is faithful and that He loves you. Thank you for listening, and we'd love to have you come to Friendship Baptist Church, Center Star, Alabama. It's an amazing place because we serve an amazing God. Thanks for listening.